supply chainers, wherever you are in the world. This is Sarah Barnes-Humphrey with you today. Are you ready? Let's talk supply chain. Hello, everyone, and happy Tuesday. I am back in studio, and I'm super excited to be here with you today. We've got a jam-packed episode full of really cool trending topics today. But of course, I have a great guest with me, and it's Kerim Kfuri. And I'm super excited to hear his take on some of the biggest topics like microfactories. And you might be wondering what that has to do with you. Well, it's got a lot to do with your supply chain challenges and how you're thinking about AI. But before we get into any of that, I do need to give a shout out to our show sponsor, which is the Secret Society of Supply Chain. And you can head over to secretsocietyofsupplychain.com to sign up for our membership today. We've got a couple of different ones. We've got Women in Supply Chain Connections as well. And I want to give a shout out to some of our newest members. So our newest Secret Society of Supply Chain members, we've got Tangang Francis, we've got Andrew Grossman, and we've got Gina Wicken-Diltz. And then a big welcome to our Woman in Supply Chain Connection members. We've got Kristen Harrison, Stephanie Sharp, and Emily Nichols. Thanks for joining us. We've got some great conversations happening over there. So hope to see the rest of you in there. All right, let's get to what is happening this week on Let's Talk Supply Chain. So we've got a brand new episode 487. And this is with Chris from Bloom Global about making visibility data usable. And he's talking about how they manage 1.3 million IoT events per day. How do they do it? Well, you're going to have to tune into the episode to find out how they do that and what that means for you and your business. So head over to wherever you listen to the show. We're also over on the Let's Talk Supply Chain YouTube. Tomorrow at 11:30 a.m. Eastern, it is our last On the Margins event with Coupa. Now go and check it out because this is one that we recorded at Coupa Inspire just a few months ago. We're talking about easing AI adoption hurdles in finance, supply chain, and procurement with Andy and Chris. If you've seen a past On the Margins episode, you know how fun they are and how valuable the insights really are. So click the attend button and we will send you the link, even if you can't attend live. Also tomorrow at 1 p.m., I am going live with Albert, the CEO over at Octane and ShipStation, and we're going to be talking about how you can be holiday rush ready. I was talking to somebody this morning about how Amazon is gearing up for the rush already and how they're talking to some of their drivers about what is going to happen. And so you need to be ready today. I know it's only August, but it is coming up soon. So click the attend button and join us. Even if you can't attend live, we will send you the link. Excuse me. Then on Thursday, I'm going live again at 1 p.m. I know you can't get rid of me. We are going live a lot this week with Jordan from Warner, and we're going to be talking about how we can fight cargo theft together. Now, we recently did a LinkedIn Live a few months ago about this particular topic, so you know how big this is. Millions and millions of dollars are on the line with cargo theft right now, and we want to make sure that you can prevent it, but also that you can take action and protect your business as well. So click the attend button and join us live or get the link afterwards as well. Thursday, September 4th at 1 p.m., I am going to be going live with 910 Advisors as well as Mary McNelly, Senior Vice President at Fender, and she's back to talk all about what she's doing in supply chain and how we can stop the margin erosion and how you boost your profit with cost to serve tactics. Now, they were on the show talking about this cost to serve insight, and I'll tell you, it's definitely not something that you want to miss. So go and check that out. Click the attend button and I'll see you there. And then, of course, we've got BlackBerry Radar webinar happening September 9th at 2 p.m. Eastern. Can't wait for that one. We're talking about visibility, velocity. It's going to be another discussion about how a client has been using asset tracking to really boost their business. So click the attend button and join us for that one. And then we've got some in-person events, and I can't wait to see you there. We are going to be recording podcast episodes live on site at IANA Expo, and that's happening September 15th through 17th. And if you haven't heard, which I don't know how you haven't heard it because we have been posting this everywhere, we are hosting a pickleball slam on September 15th at IANA Expo, and there's only a few spots left to play, or even if you want to come and attend and watch all the fun, the link is in the comments. Make sure you come and have a good time with us. Then I'm going to be in Paris, France on November 6th for Visibility Now with Scipio. And we're also going to be putting that footage, all of the videos that we're going to be taking that day, we're going to be putting it out live later on November 6th. So stay tuned for that. And then we're going to be at the Woman in Supply Chain Forum November 18th through 20th. Wow, so much going on, so much to keep on top of, but we got through it. And I want to say thank you to some of our sponsors for the Pickleball Slam. We've got Linksys, Birdseye, Harbor Trucking. We've got the Cool Kids coming and playing some pickleball at the slam, so I can't wait to see them there. We've got Blended, Secret Society of Supply Chain, Retail Reworks, and a few more. So we can't wait to see you there. And again, remember, for this conversation, if you love what we're talking about, I want to see some fire emojis in those comments. All right, it's now time to bring up our guest for today. Kerim, hello, how are you?
How are you, Sarah? Good to see you, as always.
Good. It's great to see you. I have not been in the hot seat for the last couple of weeks because I have been in Europe and we had a fabulous time. But you have also been traveling and you've been doing some fun stuff. And I know you've told me some of it. I don't know how much you can say publicly, but what have you been up to? And tell everybody who you are and what you do.
Sure. My name is Kerim Kfuri, President and CEO of the Atlas Network, a global supply chain solutions company with offices in the United States and abroad. We basically try to make difficult challenges within the supply chain easier for folks and streamline that from A to Z. And that's a really complicated, difficult space that everybody needs help with these days, and just in general with the importance of supply chain. And we really work very, very hard to help our customers do this. I mean, outside of doing all that and managing a network of almost 2,000 suppliers and doing all that kind of work, I do a lot of thought leadership, have a podcast, like you said, supply and demand show, and been down to the New York Stock Exchange a lot recently. I mean, I've been down there 4 times in the last 6 weeks.
Wow.
Doing a lot of commentating about the status of the global economy and, tariffs and all those things that we're all dealing with and looking at these days. And that's all been exciting too, to just kind of see the other side of the industry and how it impacts Wall Street. That's where I started a long time ago when I started in finance. And so it's kind of a lifelong realization and full circle to be back down there where I originally started in finance and Wall Street and seeing the impacts of the global economy on the stock market and shareholders and all of that interesting stuff. So yeah, not a lot going on, just a little going on in my world.
Well, we're going to dive into that just a little bit more, a little bit later on in the show. But congratulations. I mean, your show is great. I was on it just a few months ago, had a great time with you. And we talked a lot about a few different topics, and you kind of threw some questions at me that I didn't know ahead of time, which I had fun answering. And so, congratulations on all that success. Now I want to give a shout out because we have our first fire emoji from Lauren. We love our fire emojis here because that's the way we know everybody likes the conversation. But also, if you're watching, tell us where you're watching from. We want to know all of that as well. If you've got a question today, put it in the comments. We want to get to all of it. Well, now it's time to get to our poll. Now we ask the audience, or at least our followers over on LinkedIn, a question every single Wednesday morning. And so this question was about us sort of being a little bit curious. We wanted to just see where everybody's at right now as far as the biggest challenge challenge in logistics. So what do you see as the biggest challenge in logistics right now? We had 115 votes. You still have one day left if you want to participate and be part of the poll conversation. 43% of you said supply chain disruptions. It's one of the reasons why I wore my supply chain issues shirt today. 35% of you said rising transportation costs. 23% said lack of real-time visibility. Does this surprise you, Kerim?
Not at all. I mean, and I would, if I was to pick one of these things or areas, I would absolutely trend towards supply chain disruptions as well. I would tell you that the important thing, though, is to understand that in global supply chain, that disruptions are normal. That's the thing. You know, we have this idea that disruptions are a bad thing. And oftentimes we don't want to overturn the apple cart. But what's really interesting is how there's so much opportunity in the chaos. And when you look at things with a different sort of magnifying glass, you're able to really be able to see things or be able to potentially have new enhancements that you never would have considered before if that disruption didn't occur. So I'm a supply chain optimist. I look for those kinds of things. Our world is all about basically putting our fireman's coat on every day and putting out fires and finding those opportunities when chaos happens. So supply chain disruptions, absolutely. I would assume that would be a top choice, but maybe not in a negative way. You know, maybe in a way that you look at it and say, okay, maybe now's the time to change things up because there are these disruptions. So it all depends on, I think, your perspective on that.
I love that perspective. And we're all innate problem solvers. I think everybody in supply chain has that problem solving muscle. But I think when you think about it that way, like disruption is kind of a negative word. Maybe we need to find a different word to replace that with, and we change the perspective on it. That those disruptions kind of test our problem solving muscles and get us to think more creatively, more strategically, more innovative, right? And that's where sort of the magic happens with supply chain professionals, I think. Right.
Yeah, if you're operating in the global economy, how are you going to handle when, you know, you just have a hurricane, you know? How are you going to handle when there's potentially a strike at a port, or there's a trade conflict, or there's really anything going on in the world that you could have never seen coming? Well, you got to be ready for that. You got to be adaptable. You got to be flexible. You could be modular. You got to know where you're going with things in order to work in those arenas. And the only way to do that is to have that flexibility and that mindset that anything can and possibly will happen in global supply chain. And so some things you can control, some things you can't control, but you still got to push forward. So let's be positive about it, right?
Love that. Love that. So now is the time of the show where I kind of ask you for a market update. What are you hearing? What's top of mind for everybody? What's something that we should really be considering right now as supply chain professionals?
Well, I think the impacts of what's been happening in global supply chain, we know the supply chain sort of moves slowly, but when it happens, the impacts are felt immediately. And that's really what we're starting to see in the economy today. We're starting to see some changes and challenges given some of the global events that have been occurring that are impacting the markets. It's impacting the price of products. And we need to, as supply chain professionals and as consumers, be able to know how to navigate and deal with these changes that are happening, whether it's scarcity of particular products or it's increased pricing, the availability and the ability to distribute effectively. So we're really starting to see a lot of these scenarios coming to light. And, you know, I'm speaking a lot about that, as I mentioned before, on the New York Stock Exchange and so forth. And when we have these indicators like the CPI report and the PPI report, right, the Consumer Price Index, the Producer Price Index report, that show us particular indicators on where there could be inflation or potential recession coming, we need to, as supply chain professionals, be able to give the best advice and guidance to our customers and therefore consumers on how to navigate those things that are coming about in 6-month, 12-month, and even longer type of intervals. And decision making has to be made and considerations have to be had. So these are a lot of what I am dealing with these days from our customers and from the media side, where everybody wants to know how to navigate the impacts of what has been happening in the global economy.
Yeah, I appreciate you for sharing that. I saw a post this morning from some Canadian small businesses talking about how there's 35% tariff supposedly coming through August 29th. And I say that because we just don't know, right? Things have been
Right.
shifting for months. But it's going to impact those Canadian small businesses to sell to Americans. And
Yes.
so they're trying to figure out their supply chains and who they're going to be selling to and what does that mean, and it's really going to throw that de minimis sort of out the window. I mean, everybody has been, very lucky with I think with the de minimis being at $800, and now there's a big shift. So there
Yes.
is a lot going on, and it's affecting businesses, you know, from one end of the spectrum to another. That's just one particular example that it's going to start affecting some small businesses, at least in, Canada selling to Americans.
Absolutely. And there's a lot of other areas too. I mean, look at pharmaceuticals. They're talking about potentially a 250% tariff on that. I mean,
Right.
that's huge. Think about that for people who just need medicine. They just need it as their daily life.
Right.
Even when there was the discussions around copper tariffs. I mean, how many products do we use that need copper in them? Consumer electronics, automotive, our phones that we use every single day. Maybe we'll talk about that later on. But the
We
point is,
are.
but the point being is that there are materials that are, under sort of scrutiny and discussion, and obviously we need to have potential carve outs for different categories and areas that will make it, not as heavily felt by consumers, because that's really what our goal and our focus is in the realm of supply chain. I mean, the end all be all result is that products get in the hands of consumers so that the
Mhm.
economy can be able to thrive and grow and expand. And if
Yeah.
that process gets disrupted by either those controllable or those uncontrollable factors, then that's really where we see the real breakdown of what the supply chain is supposed to be, what its intended focus is.
Yeah.
And so we just need to keep eyes and ears on all this stuff for sure.
Yeah. Well, and that was a good transition to our first article, because we're talking about how Apple opened up a manufacturing academy in Detroit. Now, there's been some pressure from the new administration for some companies, particularly Apple, to invest in the U.S. And they've made a commitment, and part of that commitment has been for this manufacturing academy. But I was on Bloomberg a couple of months ago because I read an article about if Apple were to move manufacturing of iPhones to the US. And when I was on Bloomberg, I said, it would cost like $3,000 for an iPhone. And the host of the show was like, wait a second, I have 3 iPhones in my household. That's $10,000. I can't afford that. So, I think there are a lot of different discussions and ways that we can invest in how we are moving goods and how we're manufacturing goods. And these discussions need to be had so that we can figure out what's best for everybody, right? What did you think about this article when I sent it over?
I mean, I think it's a great article. And, I'm a fan of nearshoring opportunities wherever they're possible. But here's where I think the rubber meets the road with any of these sort of opportunities in nearshoring. It's really around looking at 5 major factors. And I talk about this all the time, every day, pretty much. It's materials, right? Access to the materials. Do you have them, or is it going to be super expensive to import them in, whether it's, the copper we were just talking about or whatever else
Right.
it is? Output. Are you able to, through this new equation that you've created or this new facility or whatever, be able to create enough product that the market needs? Because if you don't, then you have this scarcity situation where everything just goes through the roof because you just don't make enough widgets per day. You don't have the bandwidth to
Yeah.
do so. It may be nearer and it may be in your backyard, but you can't accommodate the global, the economy's needs. So that's the second thing. Third thing is resources, right? So where are we with the resources? Do the people that are making the widgets now, do they know what they're doing? And if they don't, what's the runway? How long is it going to take for them to get there? Do we have the technology in place, not just for today, but in expansion and growth and for the future? And finally, the last aspect is what you just said. How is the cost definitively created or impacted because of these other 3 or 4 factors I just mentioned? So yeah, it's interesting and exciting to see, a nearshoring opportunity and additional investment in being able to bring things to our domestic economy, and that'll maybe create jobs and other unique opportunities and so forth. But at what cost? The consumer at the end is what we discussed, is the tail end of that supply chain, and the most important factor, right? The tail wagging the dog. So if it is a $3,000 iPhone, yay, it was done here, but everything else just kind of broke down and no one can afford it. So this is how I see it: exciting, interesting, but what's being weighed, and will it really flow through in a way that's beneficial for the consumer? Because if it isn't, that's going to be an impact that no one's going to want to feel.
And the balance. I had a conversation with somebody from AWS Supply Chain yesterday, and that episode's going to be coming out in a couple of weeks. And it was so interesting because we were talking about how AI is going to help optimize supply chain. And they were like, but it's going to optimize it to a point that your sales is going to have to keep up. And I know this is a little bit different than what you were talking about, but these are all sort of different things that we need to think about within our supply chain. If we get too optimized, sales needs to keep up so we can actually sell more product to keep the supply chain moving. And so when we talk about balance, and we talk about all of the things that we take into consideration when we make these decisions of where things should be manufactured and how we move goods and where the raw materials are being bought, and how do we optimize our supply chains and our warehouses and use robotics and AI, et cetera, et cetera. Like it can be so overwhelming, and we're going to cause, challenges and disruptions that we probably can't even predict right now on this show that could happen in 6 to 12 months. And so it's just fascinating how we're going to have to problem solve. Now, I want to get to the next, it's not really an article, but we're featuring your website because we want to talk a little bit more about what you do. You have a few different things that you do. What is your background? How did you get into what you're doing right now? Why did you choose consulting?
Sure. So basically, my background is I was in the realm of finance. I was at the Securities and Exchange Commission in the Office of International Affairs. I was at NASD FINRA. And, 20 plus years ago, I went to Asia and I saw an opportunity where I basically saw ideas becoming into reality, but with a significant amount of fraud entailed. And that when small to mid-sized businesses wanted to do business in the global economy, and use, let's say, different technological platforms or otherwise, that they had no recourse when and if things went wrong. And they had no capabilities to have the visibility and the transparency they really needed in the manufacturing supply chain equation. And in my mind, this mixture of consulting, I had worked at Accenture and regulatory space in the financial markets, and my entrepreneurial spirit came together. And I said, there's a real business here. And I've always been an international person. I speak 3 languages. I was on my first plane when I was 3 or 4 months old. So I've been traveling in a long time. It all kind of came together in this storm in my mind. And I said, it's now time to create an international business that essentially focuses in on helping businesses of all size navigate the global economy and navigate global supply chain. And that was the beginnings of the Atlas Network, which is a company I've been running for more than 2 decades now. Fast forward, you're on the website now, my personal website, which is kerimkfuri.com. Post the pandemic, I saw that there was a significant amount of misinformation around global supply chain. And, anyone and everyone was trying to basically sell supply chain solutions. You may have been a car salesman before, and now you're selling PPE. And it was just like, it was a wild, wild west. It was absolutely insane. And I said, I got to come out from behind sort of the curtain, like the Wizard of Oz. I got to get out from behind the curtain here and start to give my 2 cents around what the supply chain really is all about. And that was my sort of beginnings of thought leadership. I wrote a book, which you had up on the site, Supply Chain Ups and Downs. I've been doing a lot of, podcasts and tier 1 media and all those things to really just essentially educate and provide resources to consumers and businesses who then, if they need our help, we can do that as well. But generally speaking, for the purposes of general education, because there just isn't enough. Yeah. And it's an industry that, touches everybody's lives every single day. And when it's broken down, guess what? Everybody's pulling their hair out. I don't have any hair left. But if I had hair, I'd be pulling it out. Maybe I pulled it out already. once upon a time, but that's the point, so we got to talk about this in a relatable manner that
Mhm.
that is justified and everybody can come to an understanding. And that's my
Yeah.
goal, my focus on the supply chain thought
Yeah.
leadership side.
Well, and there's so much noise, right? There's so much noise. And who do you listen to? What does that look like? How do you figure out who's bringing you the right information for you to be able to make those decisions? And so I'm so glad that you did that, because you have to be able to get through that noise to be able to make those decisions. Now, we have the link to the book in the comments, so go and check that out. I like the title, Supply Chain Ups and Downs. I mean, you didn't use the word disruption, and it sounds a lot more positive. So it goes with your perspective and how you think about supply chains. And so that was a really great title. All right, last but not least, let's get to our last article, because I think this one is fascinating. Now, you might be wondering what micro factories have to do with supply chain. All right, maybe not, maybe just a little bit. But micro factories in wildfire areas. Now, the wildfires in California were only just in January. I read that and I was like, wow, I feel like it was so long ago.
Mm-hmm.
And rebuilding has started. They lost over 27 structures and homes throughout that. And there's this one company that is helping with the rebuilding through micro factories. Now, the fascinating thing about this is that they're traveling between the Palisades and Altadena to build or with the micro factories to help build these homes and these structures back up. And they're using robots and AI powered systems to make fire resistant homes. And if you don't think that this is coming or here, it's definitely here once you read this article. What did you think about this, Kerim? Because I mean, this is fascinating.
I love it. I think it's amazing. And I think that the idea of micro factories is something that's here to stay and will continue to grow, especially in remote areas, areas where you just can't be able to get to easily. So I'm thinking
Yes.
about, these mountainous areas or these desert areas that are far away from, ports. So you can't get goods there easily. You just bring the factory to there, and then you then basically are able
Yeah.
to then create. And oftentimes these micro factories have a significant amount of efficiency, adaptability, flexibility. They're modular, so you can basically be able to kind of switch around and do different kinds of configurations very easily, which is wonderful. And they reduce redundancy and dependency on single source supply chain areas. And outside of that, sometimes you need manufacturing for a very precise, not high volume type of manufacturing process. And that's also where micro factories are great, because you can run one unit, or you can run 50 units, or 100 for this one, or 100 for that one. And it's really a very fascinating, amazing opportunity. I think we're just see a lot more of, especially again in areas that are restricted from access to ports and transit and just general logistics. Just take the factory to there.
I know. And I kind of think about seasonal, right? Because if we're manufacturing in other countries and there's minimum order runs and things like that, I don't know how much it costs to bring a micro factory, but depending on the costs and things like that, for seasonal products, seasonal goods in a specific location. I mean, think about that. You may not have to order 50,000 of one product. That half could go to waste if they're not sold within that 3-month period for a seasonal product, right?
Yeah,
and so I just wonder how like that is going to change the game and, reduce some of the manufacturing necessary potentially for overseas and those minimum order runs that they need to be able to run a product.
And we're even seeing some of these micro factories being put into retail stores. I mean, I've seen that. I've seen you go.
Nike.
Yeah, where it was. I want to say it was in Dubai or something like that, where I was. And I went into the Nike store, and they were like making the shoes right there in the store. They're like, oh, what color do you want the swoosh to be? And what do you want the bottom part and the laces? And I'm like, you're going to make the shoe like right now? Yeah, customized for you. So that's like a mini micro factory inside of the retail shop, where you're walking out in half an hour with a pair of custom Nikes. That was really interesting to me. And I think that we're going to continue to see more and more of that, even at the retail level, where fully customized productions are done. Inventory kills businesses. So the ability to
Mhm.
basically create something on demand right there while you wait is quite fascinating. So we're going
Yeah.
to have to see how far this goes, but it is really, really unique.
I love that. I need to go to Dubai. I really want some more custom Nikes. I mean, the website is okay, but
Yeah,
like I'd love to do it in store.
absolutely.
So just a few stats on that. It's 10 times faster, 60% less labor, and 30% cheaper. I mean, especially to build these fire resistant homes. I don't know about other products, but it might be something that you want to look into. Kerim, it's all over. I told you it was the fastest 30 minutes in supply chain. We talk about a lot of things. I really am so glad that you were able to come on the show and share all of your great insights. Tune in next week. Next week, Kelly from Method and Spark is going to be here. We're going to be talking about sales in supply chain, and we're going to be talking about some other fascinating topics as well. Thank you all to everybody who showed up and watched the show today. So, Kerim, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Sarah. It's